And welcome to day 4 of the How to Encourage Your Husband Without Nagging Him Challenge, day 4. This has been a really great week for me. Honestly, sharing with you from my heart, from my life, is really helping me step it up because it's so easy to give advice. It's another thing to be convicted by it in the heat of the moment, which is what we're going to talk about today. Before I do, though, I'm just going to dive into it. I'm just going to do some quick housekeeping. So 5 times a week. If you're catching this later in the future after the week is over, everything will be saved in the guide section of the Big Family Moms from Struggling to Growing in Grace Facebook group. And if you are catching this live this week and you'd like to participate with the giveaway that we're having, then all you have to do is make sure you comment, not like, well, go ahead and comment on the video, this one today, and on the post, the action item post that will be coming out about 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time today. So all you have to do is for the 5 times this week, and you can go back if you didn't do it for, and you're just catching this maybe for the first time today in the group, comment on both the video and the post for all 5 days of the week. Boom, you're entered into the giveaway, and the winner will be announced on Saturday morning. So make sure you're taking notes if you really want to get the most out of it. Let's get into it. So the heat of the moment is what I'll be talking about today. And there's a scene that has repeated itself far too many times in my home than I care to admit, but I'm going to be real. I'm going to be raw with you because, like I said before in this week, I'm definitely coming from a place of like side by side in the trenches rather than kind of looking down from my lofty perch of, supreme wifehood and motherhood. Not quite, right? It's a growing in grace, right? So the scene that repeats itself too often than I care to admit, but I will admit it with you, is, it's a busy slice of our day. And every family has busy slices of the day where it's a little bit more of a grand central station thing going on. And the noise gets up, right? The tension maybe gets high. It just kind of is busy. And it's almost like rush hour, right? So around 4 o'clock p.m., the kids are getting kind of restless. It's getting towards the end of the day. Snack time is over. We're about T-1 hour to dinner. It's getting noisy. It's a longer day. And I'm starting to overheat. I've got dinner to get on the table within an hour. I'm kind of overtired because I'm 24 weeks pregnant with baby number 11. And I'm kind of getting down to my last nerve, right? Whether I realize it or not. In walks my hubby. Sometimes he's home a little bit early. Usually he's home by dinner time around 5. He'll give me a quick peck. Go sit down on the couch, flip open his phone, and boom. And this is the scene. So I set the stage, and I'm like, poof, my emotions just like flare, right? It was all there. I maybe just wasn't admitting it to myself, and it just took one little last straw. And I don't necessarily fly off the handle and start yelling at the man, but usually it's the nag. It's just the quiet little huff or puff or a little snide comment of like, oh, you look comfortable. The loaded comment. And he's kind of like, if he's savvy, and we've been together, married almost 20 years, he can read between the line and my little sarcastic jab or whatever. And now if he's having a more mature moment than me, he might be like, can I help you with anything? But if we both give and take the bait, this situation can quickly escalate into one of those heat of the moment situations. So it's like I'm watching a movie. You know how you have those moments in your life where it's happening in real time. The words are coming out of your mouth. You're feeling all your feelings, but you're almost like watching yourself do it at the same time. So on one hand, I hear myself kind of speaking rashly, even if it's like a huff and a puff and a little nag, nag, nag. But I know I'm just speaking out of my emotions. I know that I've had it pent up and now it's flying out on my most beloved husband. So on one level, I'm embarrassed, but at the same time, kind of feel a little bit of relief because apparently I had some pressure building up inside of me. And even though it's almost like a guilty pleasure, I'm like, well, I am, kind of like the release valve is coming off. But then what kicks in as soon as I realize that is my pride, because I'm fractionally right. Really, it was quite insensitive of him to just sit on the couch and not read my mind and know that every day for the last, 16 years that we've had kids, this is a bad time to sit on the couch. This is a great time to offer to help me out. So I've acted this scene out so many times. Like I said, it's embarrassing to recount. So when people say to me, hey, Tara, how can I encourage my husband instead of nagging him? On one hand, I could be like, I'm so disqualified from this. But here's the good news. I have grown in God's grace in this area. Like I was sharing earlier this week, a couple of years ago, I began to really take more seriously how my words, my choice of the words I was using, my choice of the emotions I was choosing was really affecting many areas of my life. And certainly, the people I'm with every day, the people I love the most, namely my husband and my children. So keeping in the context of your husband, here's what I've grown in. So another gold nugget from my heart to yours, one that's been hard earned, right? Because I've really been there. I didn't start out having this all figured out. Didn't grow in a Christian family. For the most part, I'm just playing out a scene that I've seen, like as a kid, acted out over and over and over in my family home growing up, or just in the culture, right? TV shows show this all the time. And you hear the laugh track going off. They're like, oh yeah, he's in the doghouse now, right? We're almost cheering for the woman like she's the protagonist for the way she's handling the situation. So, I get how we get there, but I wanted to get out of there. So here's what's helped me. Inquire in moments of reflection. When it's not the heat of the moment and I'm, my emotions aren't kind of driving the bus at that moment. I've been pierced by a number of scriptures, and one of them is this. I'm going to read it to you because I want to get it out right. It's in Proverbs, which is chock full of wisdom. Proverbs 12:18 says, there is one whose rash words are like sword thrusts, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. And I'm like, oh God, that's me. I can thrust with my tongue, like a sword. And I can just, bam, I have a direct line to my husband's heart, right? Because he doesn't put up the same guard that he would maybe in a more professional setting or with the guys or even with his own family. Like I can get right to his heart, which is a beautiful thing. It's a great holy thing and a responsibility, but it's also like I can cut him deep with one sentence, right? That's, and it's, so in the grace of God, I have seen that I have an incredible power to wound or to bring healing. And of course I want to be wise, but in the heat of the moment, it's easier said than done. So here's what helps. I call it pulling a Jesus. When Jesus was on trial, for on the night of his crucifixion in this totally rigged trial where he's being accused of something, he's actually, he's guilty as charged. He really was the Son of God. And so it wasn't blasphemy, which would be like a corporate crime, like a serious crime within Hebrew Jewish culture under Mosaic law. But he wasn't lying and it wasn't crazy. He actually was the Son of God. So why didn't he defend himself or just blast everybody, with angelic power? Because he had command over the armies. But instead he got really quiet. And that's always kind of almost irritated me. I'm like, speak up for yourself, defend yourself. But there are so many scriptures that talk about the Lord being our defender. And though he did speak, and right now as a family, we're going through the book of John, and we're actually right at that section at the end of the book of John where it's really opening up that whole night. We're talking about it sort of a chapter at a time or a section at a time. And I'm, it's so fresh, right? The word of God, it's always new and alive, even though I'm like, yeah, I've heard that. But no, God's like, no, talk about a sword that pierces, right? The word of God is living and active and cuts right to the bone and the marrow. And I've been struck by how quiet he stood, relatively speaking. But I was like, I can totally relate to the wisdom of staying quiet when the pressure's on, though it's for a different reason. So for me, pulling a Jesus means this: hold my tongue. I might be partially right. And my husband's probably partially right. And he's like, hey, back off, lady. Seriously, way to approach it in a way you would never want to be treated. He can sympathize with my feelings, but he can also be honest and say, how you're handling this right now is pretty mature here. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not really in my own best frame of mind to deal with that right now. So what helps, and you've probably heard this before, but it's good to hear it again, is stay quiet. When I recognize that I'm feeling the heat, the physical feeling of anger rising, and it's going to come out in this little snip, dig, maybe not a blowout, but just a little dig, right? A little tearing things down, just a little tear, a little strip, just take a little dig. I've learned to just hold my tongue. And even the count to 10 technique, which I used to laugh at and be like, oh, that's silly. Who needs to do that? Because buying a little bit of time, even a fraction of time, 5 to 10 seconds to take a deep cleansing breath, in through the nose and out through the mouth, has given me that split second that I need to think before I talk. And when I don't, I regret what I say. And I've had to eat humble pie more times than I also care to admit. And it's hard, right? It's hard, especially in the heat of the moment, to be like, I'm sorry, that came out really badly. That could be hard. And I don't know, maybe I'm the only one, but that's really hard for me to admit that I handled that poorly, especially, like I said, when I'm fractionally correct in my the content of what I was saying is like, hey, I would really appreciate some help right now. But how I said it, oh man, it was just a total nag moment. So this helps me take personal responsibility and choose a different choice to cooperate with my husband because we're on the same side, right? We're on the same team. We have shared goals to raise up a family, to be married till death do us part, right? To build up our family and our businesses and live this life so long as God grants us life on earth. I want to be friends with him, lovers with him for life. So with that in mind, rather than, competing with him for who owes who, instead I want to collaborate and work together, right? So pulling a Jesus, being quiet for a couple of seconds, and choosing how I'm going to approach the situation calmly, right? Out of my own sort of my choice, or in the heat of the moment, just blasting out or digging out whatever comes out next is really the difference sometimes between like a life and death kind of moment where I'm either going to tear him down and in turn, I'm affecting our own marriage, or I'm going to build them up. And remember, like I said yesterday, kids are watching. The kids are watching, right? When we're kids, we just pick it up like by osmosis. So if you're struggling to stay calm, like in this way with your husband or your kids, whatever sort of spectrum of nag all the way to explosive anger it might be at, I've got a free guide available on my website, and the link is in today's video post. It's 3 ways to be a more calm mom. Totally free guide available on the website. They're the principles that, though it applies to like motherhood specifically, the principles apply really to any kind of scenario where you're struggling to keep calm. So in the context of how to encourage our husband instead of nagging, I think it's really apt. It really does connect. So if you want to check that out, go ahead and click on it. It'll help you to be able, to keep your cool, pull a Jesus, stay more calm, and make better choices you feel good about. Just a second. My 8-year-old is making octopus noises. Hey, Malachi, would you be a little quieter, please? Yes, Mom. Thanks. Yeah, sure. So listen, like I said, I've run through that scenario of husband sits on the couch and I'm like, oh, how was your day? Busy? What am I really saying to her? My tone's so loaded. More times than I care to repeat, right? But I've grown in grace. I have improved, thank God. And what I share in the free guide, to be honest, is really a lot of those principles that I've, day by day, by God's grace, sometimes a little bit backwards, but then we move forwards, right? This is what's really helping me to find healthier, more constructive, more honorable ways of dealing with those stress points that can come in a big family mom life, honestly, in anybody's life, when things are busy and you're just more vulnerable, right? We have vulnerable moments. I had a bad sleep the other night, or I've had a bad sleep all month, or whatever it is. So this will help you grow in God's grace to be able to encourage your husband rather than nagging him, especially in the heat of the moment when it can be the hardest time of all, right? Easier said than done, but with a strategy, with a commitment to do things in advance, it's amazing the improvement. I've seen it. So if I can grow in God's grace in this area, then I know you can too. Thank you, ladies, for joining me today on this live, whether you're catching it now or later, or even there's been some husbands checking out this stuff. Maybe they're like, maybe there's some advice. I can share this with my wife in a very sly way. Well, I'm very honored to speak into your lives these days, especially on this topic. So God bless you. I'll connect with you tomorrow for the day 5, the last day of the challenge. So God bless you until then.